Tonight, before you close your eyes to sleep, I want you to do something that will take you less than 90 seconds. A glass, a measure of salt, a specific placement, and by the time the morning light enters your room, a movement will have already begun in the unseen layer of your financial life, the layer you have been blind to for most of your years. This is not a trick. This is not a theory I invented last week. What I am about to share with you is drawn from a tradition older than every financial system in the world, older than the banks, older than the coin, older than the idea of money itself. I am Rabbi Naomi. For more than 30 years, I have sat with the texts of my grandfathers and studied the language beneath the language of Torah. My grandmother carried this wisdom out of a village in the old country, with nothing but the clothes she wore and the words she had memorized. She passed it to my mother. My mother passed it to me. And for decades I have watched what happens to the women and the men who take this knowledge seriously, not as superstition, not as decoration, but as a technology of the spirit. The salt and the water is not folklore. It is one of the oldest instructions in our tradition, what the sages called the Brit Malach, the covenant of salt. It predates the temple. It sits at the center of every offering that was laid upon the altar. And there is a form of it that was preserved within certain families for the home, for the bedroom, for the night, for the specific purpose of opening the channel of Parnassa, the channel of livelihood that the ancient teachers called the gate of the household. If you are watching this, it is not by accident, but you must stay with me until the final minute of this teaching. If you miss even one element, the salt, the water, the placement, the words, the mourning, the ritual is incomplete and the channel will not open. Before we go further, I want you to do something for me. Type the word Shefa in the comments below, right now. Shefa is the Hebrew word for divine flow, for the abundance that pours from its source. When you speak it publicly, you enter what the sages called a spiritual agreement, a declaration before the unseen realm and before this community that you are ready to receive. Now listen, because I need you to hear why almost everything you have been taught about money has been working against you without your knowledge. You have tried the budget apps, the side hustles, the positive affirmations in the mirror. You have read the books that tell you your mindset is the only thing between you and wealth. You have listened to the men who scream at you to work harder and sleep less. None of it is wrong in the way most people think. It is wrong because it addresses the wrong layer of reality. What shows up in your bank account is not the cause. It is the shadow. You cannot fix a shadow by touching the shadow. You can scrub it, rearrange it, measure it with the finest instruments, and it will remain exactly as it is, because the object casting it has not moved. The object is spiritual. The shadow is financial. Our sages understood this thousands of years before the word economics was spoken. Imagine a house with a great engine in the basement. The engine powers every light, every appliance, every source of warmth and provision in that home. Now imagine the engine has been sealed over the years with a thick residue, the residue of 1,000 small things that have settled on it unnoticed, words you spoke about yourself that should not have been spoken, objects you brought into your home that carried the ayin hara, the residue of another person's envy, contracts of scarcity that you signed without knowing you were signing them. The engine is not broken. The engine has been covered. And no matter how hard you work in the rooms above, The engine below is only delivering a fraction of what it was built to deliver. The Brit Melach, the salt ritual I am going to teach you, is one of the ancient technologies for clearing that residue. The Talmud tells us that salt was placed upon every offering because salt represents that which does not spoil, that which preserves what is sacred, that which binds the earthly vessel to the heavenly flow. When the temple stood, no offering was accepted without it. And when the temple fell, the sages taught that the table in your home became the altar, and the glass by your bedside became the place where the covenant is renewed each night. Let me show you how I first came to know this, and what happened when I finally applied it. I was 26 years old. It was the winter of the year I should have had everything figured out, and I had almost nothing. I had just moved into a one-room apartment on the 3rd floor of a building in Jerusalem, where the elevator never worked, and the old radiator made a sound like a man clearing his throat at 3 in the morning. I was working 2 jobs. I was studying at night, and every month, on the 5th or the 6th, I would sit at the small wooden table by the window and count what I had, and there was never enough. Not for the rent, not for the books, not for the tiny life I was trying to build. My grandmother came to visit me that winter. She was 78, and she had spent most of her life with far less than I was complaining about, and yet she walked into that apartment like a queen, walking into a hall of her own making. She sat down at my table. She looked at me for a long moment, and then she asked me one question. "Naomi, where is the salt?" I did not understand. I pointed to the kitchen. She shook her head. "Where is the salt by the water at night?" And I had no answer, because no one had ever told me. That evening she took from her small bag a cloth wrapped around a measure of coarse salt. She took one of my water glasses, a plain glass, nothing special, the kind you buy in a stack at the market. She filled it at the tap. She placed a specific measure of the salt inside it. She set it on the windowsill on the east side of the room, and then she spoke words over it in the Ladino of her childhood, a language I had only heard in fragments. She turned to me and she said, "Every night before you sleep, every morning before you wash, this is how our mothers kept the channel open when there was nothing else to keep open." I remember nodding politely. I remember thinking it was a sweet piece of folk wisdom from a woman I loved deeply. And I remember that after she left on Sunday, I did not do it. Not that week, not the next week, not for 3 months. I was a modern woman. I was studying psychology and economics. I did not need a glass of salt water on a windowsill to fix my life. The crash came in April. A check I had been promised did not arrive. The landlord raised the rent. My car needed a repair I could not afford. I sat at that same wooden table one evening, and I cried in a way a person only cries when they have run out of the stories they have been telling themselves. That night, without really knowing why, I stood up, I walked to the kitchen, I took the glass, I filled it with water, I placed the exact measure of salt my grandmother had shown me, and I put it on the windowsill on the east side of the room. I said the Hebrew words I had by then memorized from our texts. I did it that night. I did it the next night. 48 hours later, I received a phone call from a cousin I had not spoken to in 2 years. He said a man he worked with needed a translator for a small project, and he had thought of me. It was not a fortune. It was 3 weeks of modest work, but it was the first unmistakable movement I had felt in a year. And from that small movement, other movements came, slowly, steadily, the way water returns to a dry riverbed. That glass of salt water on my windowsill has been there every night since. Now I need to tell you why this works, because if you do not understand the mechanism, you will perform the ritual carelessly, and the channel will only open halfway. The reason most people cannot open the channel of Parnassa in their lives is not because they are not working hard enough. It is because they do not understand that their home is the altar, their bedroom is the inner sanctuary, and the hours of the night are the hours when the spiritual realm is most receptive to instruction. You are spending your days in the marketplace, pushing against a wall that has no door, and the door you are looking for is in the quiet corner of your own bedroom, at the hour when the world is finally still. Every one of us is given a vessel. The vessel is the measure of what we are capable of receiving. If the vessel is cracked, the shefa that is constantly being poured from above simply passes through and lands somewhere else. It lands in someone else's life, and you cannot understand why they seem to receive so easily while you strain for so little. This is not unfairness. This is the law of the vessel. There are 3 residues that seal the channel over time, and you must hear them clearly because you cannot repair what you cannot name. The first is the ayin hara, what the world calls the evil eye. It is not mystical superstition. It is a real spiritual mechanism that operates when another person looks at what you have and feels a particular charge of envy or longing. That charge leaves a residue on your vessel. It does not require the other person to wish you harm. It only requires them to look and feel. Every boast you made in an unguarded moment, every photograph you posted without protection, every coin in your wallet that passed through the hands of someone who resented what you held, each can be an opening through which this residue enters. The second residue is the word you spoke against your own abundance, your own mouth. You said it when you were tired. You said it in front of your children. We can never afford that. I am just not a money person. Every time things start to go well, something breaks. The sages teach that the mouth of a person is a small court, and every word spoken there becomes a ruling in the heavenly court above. You have been sitting as the judge in your own case, and you have been ruling against yourself every day without knowing, and you cannot be blamed for what no one taught you, but you can be responsible from this moment forward. The third residue is the covenant of scarcity, the unspoken agreement your family line may have made with the frequency of lack, sometimes going back many generations. This is not your fault. You inherited it, but it is your responsibility now because you are the one in this generation with the knowledge and the instruction to break it. The salt in the water addresses all 3. Salt draws out impurity from any substance it touches. This is not only true in the physical world, it is true in the spiritual one. Water is the element of flow, of bracha, of the current of Parnassa itself. When salt is placed in water with the correct kavanah, the correct intention, and the correct arrangement, that glass becomes a small altar in your home, a place where the residue of the day is drawn out of the vessel of your life, and the channel is made clean for the shefa to enter before you wake. Now listen carefully, because the precision here is the entire ritual. If you do this casually, it does nothing. If you do it with the exactness I am going to describe, you will feel the shift. First, the salt. It must be coarse salt, what we call in our tradition melach gas, the rough salt of the earth. Kosher salt or sea salt in its natural form, not the fine table salt that has been stripped and processed into nothing. The coarseness of the crystal carries the covenant. If you do not have it tonight, table salt will begin the work, but replace it tomorrow with the coarse salt. Second, the water. Not hot, not cold. Water at the temperature of your own body. A plain glass, clear, not colored, not patterned. Fill it to the level of a hand's width from the rim, not to the top. Third, the measure. 1 level teaspoon of the coarse salt. Not a handful, not a pinch. 1 level teaspoon. Pour it slowly into the water. Do not stir it with a spoon. Rotate the glass gently 3 times in a clockwise direction. This is the direction of gathering in our tradition. Fourth, the placement. The glass is placed on a flat surface at the east side of the room in which you sleep. East is the direction of the rising light, the direction from which the Shefa enters the world each morning. If your bedroom has no east-facing surface, place it on the windowsill of the room that is closest to the east. It should not be on the floor. It should not be in the bathroom. It should not be inside a drawer or a cabinet. It must be in the open, exposed to the air of the room. Fifth, the words. Before you sleep, place your right hand, the hand of giving, over the glass, not touching the water. Speak these words quietly, with full intention. Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe, as this salt is dissolved in this water, let every residue of ayin hara, every word of scarcity I have spoken, and every covenant of lack in my lineage be dissolved with it. Open for me the gate of Parnassa. Let the Shefa of the morning find a clean vessel. That is all. In the morning, before you wash your own hands or face, take the glass, walk outside your home to a plant, a small garden, the edge of the street, and pour the water onto the earth, not into a sink, not into a drain. The earth is the one that receives what has been drawn out. Do this every night for 7 nights without missing one, and then continue as a practice of the home. Within the first 48 to 72 hours, the first sign of movement will appear. Hear me now. Here is exactly what you do tonight. Before the sun sets, you go to the shop and you buy 1 small box of kosher salt or sea salt if you do not already have it. You take a clean glass from your home. You follow the 5 steps I just walked you through: the salt, the water, the measure, the placement, the words. You do it before midnight. You go to sleep without checking your bank account, without scrolling for distraction, without speaking one more word of scarcity over your own life. You sleep as a person who has just performed an ancient covenant. In the morning, you pour the water onto the earth. Then you wait, and you watch. You are not looking for a fortune by lunchtime. You are looking for a sign of life. An unexpected phone call, a forgotten amount in a pocket or an account, a message from someone you had not heard from in a long time, a sudden clarity about a problem you had been circling for months, a dream the night after the 3rd ritual that leaves you waking with an inexplicable sense of certainty. These are the first fruits. Mark them. Acknowledge them out loud. Thank the source aloud, by name if your tradition has given you a name, or simply with the word Baruch, blessed. The acknowledgement is part of the covenant. Without it, the channel begins to close again. What I have shared with you tonight is one ritual within a complete system. It is a real piece, and if you apply it with precision, you will feel the shift in the first week. But I want to be honest with you about what one ritual alone can and cannot do. This is one gate. The complete architecture of the Jewish wisdom of Parnassah contains many more, one for the threshold of the home, one for the corners of every room where residue accumulates, one for the hours of the first light, one for the nights before the new moon, and the specific words of protection for the seasons of the year when the channel narrows. I have gathered the full teaching into a single resource, everything my grandmother taught my mother, everything my mother taught me, everything I have added from 30 years of my own study and practice with the sages of the tradition. It is not a collection of tips. It is the architectural plan of a household built on the covenant of abundance, the way our ancestors built theirs before us. If you are serious about making a permanent shift, not a one-week experiment, but a fundamental change in the frequency of your financial life, then you will not wait until things become more desperate than they already are. You will move now, while the clarity of this teaching is still fresh in you. The link is in the description below this video. Everything you need to take the next step is there. Now let me tell you what to expect in the next 72 hours, because most people are not prepared for what comes, and they undo their own breakthrough without realizing it. The first sign will come gently. It will not be fireworks. The spiritual realm does not open the gate with a thunderclap. It opens with a whisper. You will find a small amount of money in a place you had forgotten. A person you have not heard from in a very long time will contact you without explanation. You will have a moment of unusual mental clarity about something that has been heavy for months. Write these down. They are the first fruits. And hear me now, because this is the part that undoes almost everyone. A test will arrive. Within the same 72 hours, something will tighten. A bill you did not expect. A deal that falls through. A message from someone who owes you that they cannot pay. Something will appear that feels like the opposite of what you were hoping for. This is not the failure of the ritual. This is the test of the vessel. The spiritual mechanics are asking the one question that must be asked. Will you trust the covenant, or will you panic and speak death over your own beginning? Stay in the posture of certainty. Do not speak scarcity in that moment. Do not cancel your own harvest. Continue the ritual. The test passes within 48 hours of its appearance, and what tends to follow it is significantly larger than what preceded it. This is the law of the vessel, and this is the part no one teaches. What I have placed in your hands tonight is sacred. It is not a tip. It is not a hack. It is a covenant that has sustained our families through exile, through persecution, through economic collapses that left entire nations broken, and still the households that knew this kept their lamps lit. You are now one of them. Before you go, if you have not yet typed the word Shefa in the comments below, type it now. That word is your declaration. I read every comment, and I am looking specifically for the names of those who are taking action, because I keep those names in my prayer each morning before the first light. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, do it now and turn on the notification bell. Next week, I am going to teach the ritual of the threshold, the specific practice for the doorway of your home that seals the Ayin Hara against you before it ever enters. Based on what I know about the times we are living in, you cannot afford to miss it. And if this teaching reached something real in you tonight, press the like button. It tells the platform that this wisdom matters, and it carries this teaching to another soul sitting somewhere in the dark right now, searching quietly for exactly what you just received. May the channel of your Parnasa open in this very night. May the residue of every lack be drawn from your vessel. May the morning find a sign of life in your hand, and the source of all abundance find a clean vessel in you. Shalom, Chaverim. Shalom.